guys, so in this video I'm going to talk to you about a documentary that I watched on HBO. I'm a little bit late to the party on this one because I don't know, I live in the UK and basically we don't get HBO in the UK, so I had to kind of stream it online. That was a bit of a hoo-ha, but yes, I thought I'd go over this documentary and talk about it with you. There are two things I want to talk about. The first one is medical interventions used on children, and the second one is about changing your birth certificate and other government documents in order to make it more in line with your chosen gender. So in terms of the medications you can access before the age of 18, these include puberty blockers and also estrogen or testosterone. So in terms of puberty blockers, these start at around age 10 or 11, which I find particularly concerning, mainly because kids just don't know at the age of 10 or 11 whether they want to be a boy or a girl. I remember I was a real tomboy as a child, and I think that this whole gender nonsense would have confused the hell out of me because I liked playing with boys' things, I liked hanging out with boys. That doesn't mean I want to become a boy. And I think that, putting pressure on a child just because they like to play with toys of the opposite gender, it confuses them and it makes them think they're something they're not. You can be a girly boy, or you can be a tomboy, and that's fine. I don't think that means you want to change gender. But in terms of the long-term effects of puberty blockers, there is some evidence that they might lead to bone density problems, which can lead to bone fractures and general ill health with your bones in the future, and also future infertility. Now, the bone density problems obviously might cause issues for people if they keep on breaking legs and stuff like that. But I find the infertility quite concerning as well. I think at the age of 11 or 10, or even at the age of 18, often you don't want kids when you grow up. And it's when it's when you hit your kind of like 30s or late 20s that you're more thinking seriously about children. And it's quite sad to think that there'll be kids that are taking these puberty blockers that end up not destroying but not being able to experience a massive part of life, having children, because they did something stupid when they were young. And the third issue that I have is the fact that, and this comes into more veganism, and I don't think there'll be many animal rights activists talking about this, is the fact that if you're a male and you take puberty blockers, it basically means that you're not able to grow as much penile or scrotal skin. And this penile and scrotal skin is actually used for sex change surgeries if that's what they decide to do later on in life. However, as you'll see in this article, sex change surgeries actually use, if they don't have enough penile or scrotal skin, they actually have been known to use fish skin instead of as a kind of fake vagina for transgender people. So as this article explains, a number of children who were on puberty blockers at the age of 10 are now coming to the age at which they can have gender reassignment surgery. And basically, because they're on puberty blockers at such a young age, they haven't got enough scrotal or penile tissue in order to create them a vagina, basically. And in turn, they are actually going towards having fish vaginas instead, so using fish skin in order to create the vagina for these people who don't have enough penile tissue. So one of my main concerns with this is that basically by giving kids puberty blockers, we end up using more animals, because we're obviously using the animals in the animal testing for the operations in the first place, but we're also using fish skin in order to create the vaginas for these children, which is really sad. I mean, I don't know why you would support an unethical medicine, because I think it is an unethical medicine, because it could affect their future fertility and it could affect their future bone density, and in the process also testing on more animals. I just find this really quite sad, to be honest. So another thing that I really disagree with is the fact that you can access hormones like testosterone and estrogen at the age of 16. I think that that's a bit too young to access those kind of medications. Again, it leads to infertility, and I think a lot of people at the age of 16 or even 18, they think that they don't want children later on in life, and it gets to their late 20s, mid 20s, and they suddenly want children. And I find it quite sad if you get to that age and you're not able to have children. I also think it's a bit too I find 16 is a bit too young to transition in terms of in terms of using hormones and that kind of thing. They also have a lot of risks in terms of if you take testosterone, for example, it can lead to type 2 diabetes. It can lead to cardiovascular issues, such as producing more cholesterol in your arteries and having a higher blood pressure. This can actually lead to issues such as strokes and heart attacks and that kind of thing as well. So I find that these kind of drugs, I don't think that you should be taking over the age of 18. So the second thing I take issue with is the fact that you can change your gender on your passport and your birth certificate and that kind of thing. I suppose my main issue with the fact that you can change your gender on your passport or birth certificate is the fact that if you're able to change your gender on these documents, on these legal documents, this pushes the narrative that you've always been the gender that you identify as. And I find that completely ridiculous, because it leads to this idea that we have to allow men, biological men, into women's spaces, into women's prisons, into women's sports. And I can understand if you want to, change your gender. I don't know. I don't think that there's much point in changing your gender on your birth certificate, because your gender on your birth certificate is your biological gender. But if you wanted to go into the doctor and say that you're a trans man, okay, or that you're a trans woman, I find that okay. It's when you're able to identify as the opposite gender. Now, I think that in all honesty, trans rights aren't women's rights. They're a completely different thing entirely. Trans rights are trans rights. I don't mind trans people having their own sports teams, which I'll get into in a minute. But it's when they want to be on the women's team that I have an issue. So in terms of sports, I have a massive issue with men being able to play on women's teams. I have a massive issue with this because men are physically stronger than women. They tend to be faster than women. And in turn, when you're looking, okay, I could probably outswim most men. That's because I have quite a lot of training in terms of swimming. I've been swimming from the age of 5 up to the age of about 21. So, in terms of, my swimming, I probably would be better than most men. However, if I was competing against male swimmers who had as much experience as me, I wouldn't win. I would lose, hands down. And I would end up being, if I was competing among men, then I would end up being the last in the race if they had as much experience as me. And so at the very, very top levels, you're going to have pretty much all men, because women tend to be weaker and they tend to be less fast than men. And that's why we have women's sports. It's because we understand the fact that there are biological differences between men and women, and then that's why we have men and women's sports, because we understand that there are biological differences. We understand that at the very top levels, women are never going to be as good as men, and that's okay. And we have women's sports for a reason, so that we're able to let them play with people on their own level, and we're able to give scholarships to women to play sports, female sports at college. And it's very sad that when we allow trans people into that space, because what ends up happening is trans men end up getting the scholarships, not women. So yeah. Okay, so I also have an issue with trans women in female prisons, sorry. I have an issue with trans women in female prisons because even in the UK, where there's quite a lot of regulations about having trans women in female prisons, you have to go through, a whole process. They look at the crimes that you committed before. They look at, what surgeries you've had to transition into your chosen gender and that kind of thing. We still have an issue of trans women raping women in female prisons.
Transgender prisoners are 5 times more likely to carry out sex attacks on inmates at women's jails than other prisoners are, official figures show.
Right, and this is one of the issues that I have with trans women in female prisons, is the fact that they're not like women. They're different from women, and that's okay. It's okay to be a trans woman. And I think that just like men, trans women have a higher sex drive than women, and they're clearly more likely to rape than women, just like men are. And that's okay, but we need to take that into consideration when creating policies. Now, I have no problem with trans women having their own jail or being in isolation in a male prison or something. What I do have a problem with is when we suggest that somehow trans women are the same as women, because they're clearly not. Anyway, thank you for watching, guys. Please subscribe and like this video, and comment down below if you like it.